In the comments of yesterday's video on the Trump peace plan, the deal of the century, someone asked if I had heard anything about the time frame as to when this plan would be released. I think I had stated in the video that it's possible it could be released just after the Israeli elections up until the middle of the summer, or who knows, even beyond. And someone had commented that they had heard that it was going to be released on Israel's 71st anniversary. And I had indicated that I hadn't heard anything of that nature, at least not from credible sources. And a couple people were good enough to send an article. And one of the articles was from the Middle East Monitor. And then there was another person who had sent me one from Sputnik, which indicated that it was likely the deal of the century would be unveiled on Israel's Independence Day as well. But Sputnik was quoting information taken from the Middle East Monitor. And as I looked at both articles, much of it was based upon speculation or what they had heard through the grapevine, or whatever the case may be. And I'll read what was written from Sputnik. It says that U.S. President Donald Trump is likely to reveal his Middle East peace plan on May 15th, the 71st anniversary of Nakba Day, or Israeli Independence Day. The website Al Khaliya Online reported on Wednesday, according to the Middle East Monitor. The website cited unnamed sources, which that tells me right there they probably don't know, as saying that the U.S. administration had informed senior Saudi, Egyptian, and Jordanian and other officials about the date of the announcement. The long-delayed deal of the century has reportedly already been completed, with Washington having allegedly obtained financing from Arab and other nations to ensure its implementation. And if in fact the modern Arab world is financing the bulk of this, that is a very, as we talked about yesterday, it sounded like it was going to be well over $100 billion. And that's just on the projects that we know about. So I have to say that this is absolutely no joke. That's a serious amount of money. And then while I was looking at that article, I noticed that it said breaking: Netanyahu, Israel is to extend sovereignty over West Bank settlements. And one of the subheadings, it says, earlier the Israeli Prime Minister hinted that he may annex the West Bank's Area C, which is fully controlled by Tel Aviv. He also announced that he had told U.S. President Donald Trump that in his opinion, all settlements in the West Bank must remain under Israeli sovereignty. And that's kind of what was said yesterday in the article that I read to you guys regarding some of the peace details that were in my video. Now, when Mr. Trump was told this, his reply was that Mr. Netanyahu should not make that type of a move or that type of announcement until next term. And reading from the article, it says, when asked whether he believes Trump would recognize the move, the Israeli Prime Minister said to wait until next term. And here's a quote from the article. It says, I promise that you will be surprised. I cannot talk about the plan, but U.S. President Donald Trump is a big friend, and I doubt there will ever be any bigger friend than him, he said in an interview with Hebrew daily newspaper, Israel Hayom. But here's the article that I wanted to bring to you. And the reason why I did is because this takes into consideration all the ramifications that will go along with this election and the climax of this election on April the 10th. And the title of the article says, when is Trump going to roll out his Middle East peace plan? And of course, coming out of the Jerusalem Post. And if you want to read this article in full on your own, you can go to my website, go down to the articles, and it is the lead article. And that's why it's important to, many times, to go to my website, because a lot of times I will not do a video, even though I'm going to do one for this one. A lot of times I won't do a video, but I'll have important information that you're only going to find on that website. But what's going to be listed are a number of opinions of different international committees and foundations who they'll tell you what they believe will be probably the most likely time that Mr. Trump will reveal his peace plan. And it starts out by saying it was nearly impossible to walk in the hallways outside the House of Foreign Affairs Committee this Wednesday without being asked about the upcoming elections in Israel. Members of Congress, staffers, journalists, and think tankers alike are trying to speculate on who's going to win. The elections in Israel are hardly anticipated, not only because of the natural curiosity and the charged atmosphere, but also because of the long-awaited peace plan. And of course, we know that since then also in the last few weeks that the President of the United States has declared that the Golan Heights was now recognized by the U.S. as Israeli land. It's hard to see a scenario in which the administration rolls out the peace plan before new government will be in place. First, because it could be seen as interference in the formation of a new government. I probably agree with that. Even if Mr. Netanyahu does win, it's going to take quite a while in order to form a new government. So that's going to have to be in place, and it'll be based upon who, in fact, does become a part of that government in the timing of the release of this plan. We're going on. It says, second, because of the busy holiday schedule, Jews will celebrate Passover right after the elections between April the 19th and April the 27th, and Ramadan, which is sacred to Muslims, will take place between May 5th and June 4th. So that's probably another reason why it probably will not be released on May the 15th. Revealing the plan before or in between the two holidays could make the plan lose momentum on day one. And I also believe that if in fact the president were to release it during Ramadan, that might be seen as an insult. Now that's just my speculation, but I think that could very well be how they view it. Dan Shapiro, former U.S. ambassador to Israel and a senior fellow at INSS, told the Jerusalem Post that formal announcement of the peace plan during the formation of a new government is less likely. I think that's a very difficult thing to do and be successful, he said. The attention of Israeli politicians immediately after the election will be on forming the coalition, and even if it's a clear victory for Netanyahu, that's a very complicated period of time in Israel politically, with many demands being made by different parties. Having an American peace plan injected into that time frame only adds to the complication. I expect that after the election, the administration will probably decide to wait until the coalition is formed, Shapiro continued. And then, if they're going to present their peace plan, they will know the political backdrop before presenting it, rather than using the period of coalition formation to present it. Ilan Goldberg, senior fellow and director of the Middle East Security Program at the Center for a New American Security, told the Post that, to the best of his knowledge, the option of presenting the plan during the formation of the new government is still on the table. He added the elections are going to absolutely drive where the peace plan goes, whether the Kushner team even puts down a peace plan or not. Natan Sachs, I guess is how you pronounce his name, director of the Center for Middle East Policy at the Brookings Institute, also won't rule out a scenario that the plan will become public during the coalition formation process. That's possible, he told the Post, but it very much depends on what the winner of the elections asks for. So if Netanyahu wants the peace plan to come out shortly after, so it will allow him to create a centralist coalition, maybe bringing Gantz or others from the center in, then the Americans might do that. However, he doubts that is going to be the case. There is, of course, a strong logic for Netanyahu to not want a national unity government. Besides the fact that he said he wouldn't go for it, he needs to pass immunity for himself in the next Knesset, the French law, and the center cannot support that. The right wing maybe can. There's an advantage for him to go for a right-wing coalition, and in that context, the release of the plan might not fit his plan so well, in which case he might expect that but it be somewhat postponed. Goldenberg agrees that the most likely scenario is that if Netanyahu forms a right-wing government, as recent polls show, the plan will be out in the summer or the fall after the coalition has formed. Furthermore, he is not sure if we will ever see the deal of the century. He told the Post that there's also a possible scenario where the peace team takes a proposal to the president and says to him, "This is what we want to do," and he says, "Is it going to work?" And they're honest and say probably not. And the president says, well, why do I even want to do this? And then does not put out a plan at all. I do think they believe that what they are going to put out there is serious. I think that is their intention. However, he says, I also believe that the fact that they haven't even been talking to the Palestinian leadership for a year and a half is pretty indicative of the reality that whatever they put out is almost certainly going to be rejected and frankly is going to not be acceptable to the Palestinians. That's the reality. It's going to not meet Palestinian basic minimum requirements even if they think it's serious. And at that moment, I think what they will have caused, whether they mean to or not, is an opportunity for those arguing for annexation to say, see, you can't deal with the Palestinians. Let's go and annex the West Bank or Area C. And Donald Trump supported the annexation of the Golan, and he's not going to oppose this. So that's probably your answer to where the annexation of Area C is heading. And going on, it says Goldenberg estimates that there are disagreements within the Trump administration itself, which makes it hard to predict that what would be the administration's next step. I think that Jason Greenblatt and Jared Kushner are both interested in a serious plan. I think David Friedman is interested in annexation. Michael Capello, policy director at the Israel Policy Forum, told the Post that even if Trump releases a plan under a new Netanyahu government, its near certain rejection by the Palestinians will lead many on the Israeli right to argue that the Palestinians will never accept any deal and that Israel should move toward annexation as a way of breaking the failed peace process cycle. Capello thinks that in the less likely event that a Gantz-led coalition, the chance of seeing a final agreement are still meager. If Gantz wins, annexation is unlikely, but no plausible Israeli government is going to work toward a final status negotiation resulting in two states in the current political environment, where Israelis believe that they have no partner on the other side and lack any sense of urgency to leave the West Bank in order to establish a Palestinian state. He noted that a Gantz government is more likely to lessen Israel's footprint east of the security barrier and preserve the conditions for a future deal, but not to rush into negotiations aimed at actually getting to two states. Now, which coalition would the Trump administration like to see after the elections? Capello told the Post that there is no doubt in his mind. Every signal points to the administration preferring the current Netanyahu-led government. Aside from the obvious close relationship that exists between Trump and Netanyahu, the Netanyahu and other members of the Trump team, such as Kushner and Friedman, the administration's timing on the Golan sovereignty recognition seemed designed to give Netanyahu a political boost so close to the election. While the administration will undoubtedly be able to work and get along with Gantz, the closeness between Trump and Netanyahu gives the administration every incentive to want Netanyahu to continue as prime minister. Jonathan Swatzner, senior vice president for research at the FDD think tank in Washington, offers a different perspective. We cannot discount the notion that when a right-wing government makes peace, it is one that can hold. Look at Begin Sadat as a prime example. If a right-wing government prevails in these elections, some could argue that the right can make a deal that would represent a broader spectrum of Israelis and with tougher security demands. Janzer recalls a meeting that he had earlier in the Trump administration with a senior official. He told me that the thinking behind the administration's Middle East approach was that Israel would be more willing to make compromises for peace if its leaders know that America is behind them. A strong Israel is more willing to make compromises down the road. I believe that this is still the guiding principle more than some of these most recent decisions. When asked if he means that after Trump recognized Israel's sovereignty in the Golan in Jerusalem and moved the embassy, it would be easier for Israelis to trust him that any peace plan will not compromise Israel's security needs, he approves. Yes, exactly. And this is, of course, without knowing what's in the peace plan. So you have to ask yourself, is what Trump has done over the last year and a half or so been all in the name of getting the Israeli government and the people behind him in a trust situation? It seems that that's exactly the case. But going on, it says the peace plan could still go further than anyone Israel is ready to go, and that it could be a very short story. But if the peace plan is reasonable and takes into account Israel's security concerns, and Israelis are comfortable with what is on the table, and they're also comfortable with what the president is offering, it's possible that Israel will be prepared to make those compromises. Having a president that Israelis trust is a big part of the success of the plan. This gives him an advantage. It doesn't guarantee anything, but it gives him an advantage. Finally, Chancellor suggests that one should consider what he calls the X factor, the reaction from the Arab world. The Palestinians seem to oppose any deal that will be put on the table because it is a Trump administration initiative and because of the other moves that Trump has made, he clarifies. The real question is, in my mind, is whether the Arab world will be willing to push the Palestinians. And what's interesting is the strength of the friendship between the Trump administration and the Arab world, which has been fairly consistent. Now, of course, over the last couple of years, things have happened, as we've mentioned before, the recognition of Jerusalem, moving the embassy, Golan Heights. These things have put a damper on the U.S.-Arab world relationship. But is the threat of Iran greater than those disappointments? And I have to believe that the Iran threat is the number one priority of the Arab world at this time. But reading on in the article, it says the question is, how strong is it still? Can Trump still prevail upon his friends in the Sunni Arab world to push the Palestinians? And also, will the Arab world signal to Israel that if they make certain compromises, there will be benefits for them as well? In other words, this is the first time where the Arab world could have a real significant role to play. Not a minor role, but a significant role. So this plan seems to be twofold, where the Arab world may play a bigger role in enticing Israel into this peace accord and also pushing the Palestinians to it. And certainly behind the scenes, you can see that President Trump is prodding each to move forward so that this plan will actually work. And as we learned from the video yesterday, there is a tremendous amount of money at stake, and this is a very serious plan. And we haven't even seen the plan yet, but like I said, we've seen glimpses that have been leaked. And even from that information, as I said earlier, it is to the tune of $100 billion plus. So there are all the various possibilities and the reasons why it may be released at certain times. And this coming from some of the sharpest and brightest minds in the foreign policy, Middle East, Israeli community. So I would have to say that if anybody's going to know, they're going to be closest to knowing. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cut this video off now because it's been close to 20 minutes. And I'd just like to say before I go, if you don't know the Lord, today is the day that you need to get saved. You need to know Him as Savior if you plan on going to heaven. There is no other way to heaven except through Jesus. And secondly, of course, if you don't have my Tribulation Period Survival Guide, you need to get it today. You need to get it in the hands of every lost friend and loved one that you know. As you know, there is a free version and also a paid version. Go down to the description section of this video and you can click on the link to get whichever you feel you need to have. Give it to your lost friend or loved one. You certainly don't want the world telling your friend or loved one how they need to react once the tribulation period begins. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I hope it's given you insight into where we are, how close we may be to the rapture of the church. Well, this is Terry Malone with the Calvary Prophecy Report.